What happens when reality stops following its own rules? We trust reality to be consistent. Time moves forward. Physics applies equally. People dance when they choose to, not when something forces them. But what if reality glitches? Strasbourg, 1518. Hundreds of people began dancing. Not at a festival, not by choice. They danced for days. Some danced until they died. No music, no reason, just uncontrollable compulsion. Ohio, 1977. An observatory radio telescope detected a signal from space. 72 seconds of a transmission so powerful, so structured, it couldn't be natural. Scientists have searched for it ever since. It never repeated. It came once, and then silence. Hoia Baciu Forest, Romania. Visitors enter with watches that work, electronics that function, memories that are intact. They exit hours later, except their devices say minutes have passed. Time doesn't flow correctly there, and no one knows why. 3 events where reality behaved incorrectly. 3 cases where the rules we trust simply stopped applying. Tonight, we're examining moments when the world broke its own physics, when inexplicable forces took control, when reality proved it's stranger than we're comfortable admitting. Because sometimes, the most terrifying thing isn't what we can't explain. It's realizing we might not understand how reality actually works. Let's begin with the summer, when hundreds of people danced themselves to death. In July 1518, in the city of Strasbourg, then part of the Holy Roman Empire, now France, something happened that medical historians still debate: a dancing plague. July 14, 1518, it begins. A woman named Frau Troffea stepped into the street and began to dance. Not celebratory dancing, not performance dancing, compulsive, uncontrollable dancing. She danced alone in the narrow street. Bystanders watched, confused. Hours passed, she didn't stop. She danced through the day, through the night, into the next morning. Days 2 for the spread. By the 4th day, Frau Troffea had been joined by 34 others. They danced in the streets, in squares, seemingly unable to stop. Witnesses described dancers with wild eyes, bloodied feet, expressions of exhaustion and terror, but they continued dancing. City authorities initially thought this was some kind of religious fervor or mass hysteria that would pass. It didn't. Week 1, mass affliction. Within a week, approximately 400 people were dancing uncontrollably in the streets of Strasbourg. They danced in shifts as exhaustion overwhelmed them, collapsing only to rise and dance again hours later. Medical physicians of the era examined the dancers. They found no physical cause. The dancers weren't drunk. They weren't possessed by obvious illness. They were simply dancing. Some dancers begged for help, pleading to be restrained, but the moment they were released, the compulsion returned. The death toll. Historical records from Strasbourg physician notes and city council documents indicate that approximately 15 people per day died during the peak of the outbreak. Causes of death included heart attack from exhaustion, stroke from overexertion, simple exhaustion leading to collapse and death. The bodies were removed from the streets. The dancing continued. The authorities' response. Strasbourg City Council and medical advisors made a decision that, in retrospect, seems insane. They believed the dancers would only recover if they danced it out of their systems. The council built wooden stages in public squares to contain the dancers, hired musicians to play music constantly, brought in professional dancers to help the afflicted dance more efficiently. The logic: if the dancing was caused by hot blood, then dancing until exhausted would cool the blood and cure the affliction. It made it worse. With music and encouragement, more people joined. The dancing intensified. Late July-August, the end. By late August, the dancing began to subside, not because of any medical intervention, but seemingly on its own. Dancers gradually stopped. Some collapsed and didn't rise again. Others simply walked away, dazed and exhausted. Within weeks, the streets of Strasbourg returned to normal. Approximately 400 people had danced. Estimates suggest between 50 and 100 died. Historical documentation. The dancing plague of 1518 is not folklore. It's documented in Strasbourg City Council records, physician Daniel Gressris's notes, chronicler Sebastian Brandt's accounts, church records from the Cathedral of Strasbourg. Multiple independent sources confirm the same story. Hundreds danced, many died, it lasted weeks, and no one could stop it. Theories. 1. Ergot poisoning, ergotism. Ergot is a fungus that grows on rye and other grains. Consuming ergot-contaminated bread causes convulsions, hallucinations, and involuntary muscle spasms. However, ergot poisoning typically causes violent convulsions, not coordinated dancing. No records indicate bread contamination that year. The dancing was sustained and rhythmic, not spasmodic. 2. Mass psychogenic illness, mass hysteria. Psychological stress can cause physical symptoms in groups, particularly in communities under extreme pressure. Strasbourg in 1518 was experiencing famine, recent crop failures, disease, smallpox and syphilis outbreaks, religious tension, Reformation conflicts beginning, economic hardship. Under these conditions, mass psychogenic illness could theoretically explain spontaneous, shared physical symptoms, including dancing. However, mass psychogenic illness typically affects small, isolated groups, schools, workplaces, not hundreds across a city. The sustained nature, weeks, not hours, is unusual. Deaths from exhaustion are rare in documented mass hysteria cases. 3. Cult or religious fervor. Some historians suggest the dancers were members of a religious cult, performing penance or ritual. However, no religious group claimed responsibility. Dancers begged to be stopped, inconsistent with willing ritual. The Catholic Church condemned the dancing as demonic, not sacred. 4. Encephalitis lethargica. A brain inflammation that can cause movement disorders. However, this disease wasn't documented until 1917, and symptoms don't match precisely. 5. Stress-induced trance state. Extreme psychological stress can induce dissociative states where people engage in repetitive behaviors involuntarily. Under conditions of famine, disease, and social collapse, entire populations might enter trance states manifesting as dancing. Modern medical perspective. Dr. John Waller, a medical historian from Michigan State University, studied the 1518 event extensively. His conclusion: stress-induced mass psychogenic trance. Strasbourg's population was traumatized by famine, disease, and religious upheaval. Belief in curses, divine punishment, and demonic possession was widespread. Under extreme stress, mass suggestion and trance states could theoretically cause compulsive dancing. But Waller acknowledges, we may never fully understand what triggered this event or why it manifested as dancing. Not the only incident. The 1518 Strasbourg event was the largest, but not unique. Similar dancing plagues were documented. Aachen, Germany, 1374. Cologne, Germany, 1374. Utrecht, Netherlands, 1518. Metz, France, multiple incidents between 1200s 1500s. The Strasbourg event is the best documented and most deadly. The aftermath. Strasbourg authorities eventually banned dancing and music in public. The city built a chapel to St. Vitus, the patron saint invoked against dancing plagues, at the site where many dancers died. Frau Troffea's fate is unknown. She was the first to dance, but whether she survived is not recorded. The dancing plague of 1518 remains one of history's most bizarre and well-documented medical mysteries. Hundreds danced, many died, and no explanation fully satisfies the evidence. From people who couldn't stop dancing, to a signal that came once and never returned. On August 15, 1977, at 11:16 p.m. Eastern Time, the Big Ear radio telescope at Ohio State University detected something extraordinary. A radio signal from space so powerful, so precisely structured, that Dr. Jerry R. Amen, reviewing the data printout 3 days later, wrote "Wow" in red pen next to the reading. It would become the most famous 72 seconds in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. The Big Ear radio telescope. Located near Delaware, Ohio, the Big Ear was operated by Ohio State University from 1963 to 1998. It was designed to detect radio emissions from space as part of the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence SETI program. The telescope worked by scanning the sky as Earth rotated. As the planet turned, different sections of the sky passed through the telescope's field of view. Any given point in the sky would remain in view for approximately 72 seconds before Earth's rotation moved it out of range. August 15, 1977. The Big Ear was conducting routine scanning, recording radio signals from space. Most detections were background noise, natural radio emissions from stars, galaxies, and interstellar dust. At 11:16 p.m., the telescope detected something different. The signal. The signal had several extraordinary characteristics. 1. Frequency. The signal was detected at 1420 MHz, which corresponds to the emission frequency of hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe. This is significant because radio astronomers consider 1420 MHz the most likely frequency for interstellar communication. It's in a quiet band of the electromagnetic spectrum, with minimal natural interference. Transmitting at hydrogen's frequency would be a logical choice for a civilization trying to be noticed. 2. Strength. The signal was incredibly strong, approximately 30 times more powerful than typical background noise. It stood out dramatically on the data printout. 3. Duration. The signal lasted exactly 72 seconds, the maximum time any point in the sky remains in the telescope's field of view. This suggests the signal was narrowband precise, not scattered. It came from a specific point in space. It wasn't a brief burst, it was a sustained transmission. 4. Origin. The signal appeared to come from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, near the Chi Sagittarii star group, approximately 122 light-years from Earth. The discovery. The Big Ear recorded data onto paper printouts. Computers analyzed incoming signals and printed intensity values as numbers and letters. A typical reading showed values like 1 or 2, weak signals. The wow signal's intensity was so high it exceeded the numerical scale, printing as 6^5, a progression showing the signal's intensity rising, peaking, and falling as Earth's rotation carried the telescope's field of view past the source. 3 days later, volunteer researcher Dr. Jerry Amen was reviewing printouts. When he saw 6^5, he immediately recognized it as extraordinary. He circled it and wrote "Wow" in the margin. The follow-up. Once identified as unusual, researchers attempted to relocate the signal. The Big Ear immediately began repeatedly scanning the same section of sky. Over the following days, weeks, and months, the telescope searched for the signal. It was never detected again. In subsequent years, other radio telescopes, including Arecibo, one of the most powerful in the world, scanned the same region. SETI projects dedicated observation time to the Chi Sagittarii area. The search continues sporadically to this day. The signal has never repeated, Or if it has, we haven't detected it. Theories. 1. Extraterrestrial intelligence. The signal's characteristics, frequency, strength, duration, narrowband nature, are consistent with an artificial transmission. If an intelligent civilization wanted to announce its presence, a powerful, narrowband signal at the hydrogen frequency would be a logical approach. However, why only once? If it was a beacon, why hasn't it repeated? Why no follow-up signals or patterns? Could a single 72-second transmission really be intentional communication? 2. Interstellar scintillation. Natural cosmic sources, like pulsars or quasars, can have their signals amplified by interstellar plasma, creating brief, intense bursts. However, the signal's narrowband nature is inconsistent with natural sources, which tend to be broadband. No known natural phenomenon produces a signal precisely at 1420 MHz with this structure. 3. Human-made interference. Satellites, aircraft, or ground-based transmitters could have caused the signal. However, 1420 MHz is a protected frequency. Terrestrial transmissions are prohibited. The signal appeared to come from a fixed point in the sky, not a moving satellite. The 72-second duration matches celestial transit time, not satellite movement. 4. Reflected signal. A human transmission reflected off space debris or a passing asteroid. However, no corresponding terrestrial transmission was identified. The signal's strength and precision are difficult to explain as a reflection. 5. Comet emissions. In 2017, astronomer Antonio Paris proposed that the signal could have been caused by a comet releasing hydrogen as it passed through the telescope's field of view. He identified two comets, 266P/Christensen and 335P/Gibbs, that were in the area in 1977, but weren't cataloged until later. Paris's hypothesis. Comets release hydrogen clouds. Hydrogen emits radiation at 1420 MHz. A comet in the right position could produce a strong, brief signal. However, other researchers dispute whether comets produce signals strong enough. The narrowband nature of the WOW signal is inconsistent with diffuse comet hydrogen clouds. Follow-up observations of these comets haven't reproduced similar signals. Dr. Amon's perspective. Jerry Amon, the original discoverer, remained cautious. In interviews before his death, he stated, "We should have seen it again when we looked for it 50 times. Something suggests it was an Earth-sourced signal that simply got reflected off a piece of space debris." But he also acknowledged, "Without confirmation, we can't draw definitive conclusions. It remains unexplained." SETI's perspective. SETI scientists note that a genuine extraterrestrial signal would likely repeat to ensure it's noticed, contain information or patterns, be part of a broader transmission strategy. The WOW signal was singular and contained no obvious pattern beyond its strength and frequency. This makes it frustratingly ambiguous. Current status. As of 2025, the WOW signal remains unexplained. It's considered one of the most intriguing events in SETI history, but not definitive proof of extraterrestrial intelligence. The Big Ear telescope was dismantled in 1998. The land was sold for development. Modern radio telescopes continue searching, but the WOW signal has never been replicated. The coordinates. For anyone interested, the signal appeared to originate from right ascension, 19H25M 31s plus or minus 10s. Declination, minus 26 degrees 57 plus or minus 20. Constellation, Sagittarius. You can point a telescope at those coordinates tonight. You'll see stars, possibly exoplanets orbiting them, but you won't hear the signal. Because it came once, 47 years ago for 72 seconds, and then it stopped. From a signal that came from the sky, to a forest where time itself stops working. Hoia Baciu Forest is located near Cluj-Napoca in Transylvania, Romania. It spans approximately 250 hectares, about 618 acres. It's a normal forest in most respects: trees, wildlife, hiking trails. Except for the part where time doesn't work correctly, and electronics fail, and people experience missing time. And there's a circular clearing where nothing grows. The history. Local legends suggest the forest has been considered cursed for centuries. The name, Hoia Baciu, allegedly comes from a shepherd, Baciu, who disappeared into the forest with 200 sheep and was never seen again. Romanian folklore describes the forest as a gateway between worlds, a place where the veil between realities is thin. But the modern documentation began in the 1960s. 1968, the photograph. Romanian biologist Alexandru Sift was conducting research in Hoia Baciu when he photographed what appeared to be a disc-shaped object in the sky above the forest. The photo, widely circulated, sparked international interest. Skeptics argued it was a cloud formation or camera artifact, but the photo's timing coincided with increasing reports of unusual phenomena in the forest. The clearing. At the center of Hoia Baciu is a nearly perfect circular clearing approximately 30 meters in diameter. Vegetation grows densely up to the edge of the clearing, then stops abruptly. Inside the circle, nothing grows. The soil has been tested. No chemical contamination, no unusual pH, no obvious reason for the barren ground. Yet trees refuse to root there, grass doesn't sprout, and even moss avoids the area. Local legends claim this is where the forest's energy is strongest. Documented phenomena. Over decades, visitors to Hoia Baciu have consistently reported similar experiences. One missing time. Multiple visitors describe entering the forest for what feels like 20-30 minutes, only to emerge and discover hours have passed. Watches and phones show elapsed time inconsistent with their perception. In 2002, a group of 5 hikers from Cluj-Napoca entered the forest at 2:00 p.m. for a brief walk. They exited at what they believed was 3:00 p.m. Their phones and watches showed 6:30 p.m. 4.5 hours had passed, but they had no memory of it and couldn't account for the time. 2. Electronic malfunction. Cameras, phones, GPS devices, and other electronics frequently malfunction in specific areas of the forest, particularly near the clearing. Reports include camera batteries draining from full to empty in minutes, phones shutting off despite full charge, restarting normally after leaving the forest, GPS devices showing incorrect location or failing to acquire satellite signals, video footage corrupted or showing visual artifacts, unexplained lights, distortions. 3. Physical symptoms. Visitors frequently report sudden intense anxiety or dread upon entering specific areas, nausea and headaches near the clearing, feeling watched or followed, burns or rashes appearing on skin without obvious cause, later fading, extreme thirst and dehydration despite adequate water intake. 4. Visual phenomena. Unexplained lights, shadows, and shapes are commonly reported. Orbs or balls of light moving between trees. Dark, human-shaped shadows with no corresponding source. Faces appearing in photographs that weren't visible during capture. Mist or fog appearing suddenly in isolated areas despite clear weather. 5. Unusual tree growth. Many trees in Hoia Baciu exhibit strange growth patterns. Trunks twisted in spiral patterns. Branches bending at extreme, unnatural angles. Trees growing in loops or zigzags. Charring on trunks with no history of fire. Botanists have studied these trees. Some suggest environmental stress, wind, soil composition, could cause unusual growth, but the concentration of deformed trees in Hoia Baciu is statistically unusual compared to surrounding forests. Scientific investigations. 1970s 1980s, Adrian Patrat. Romanian chemist Adrian Patrat conducted studies in Hoia Baciu, collecting soil samples, measuring electromagnetic fields, and documenting tree anomalies. He concluded the forest exhibited unusual electromagnetic activity, but couldn't determine the cause. 2000s, paranormal research teams. Multiple paranormal investigation teams, Romanian and international, have conducted studies using EMF detectors, thermal cameras, and audio equipment. Common findings: electromagnetic field fluctuations in specific areas, particularly the clearing. Temperature variations inconsistent with surrounding areas. Audio recordings capturing unexplained sounds, whispers, footsteps, non-human vocalizations. However, these findings are difficult to verify independently and are often dismissed by mainstream science as equipment malfunction or confirmation bias. Theories. 1. Geological electromagnetic activity. The forest sits on limestone bedrock. Some researchers hypothesize that underground water flowing through limestone could generate electromagnetic fields, affecting electronics and potentially influencing human perception, causing hallucinations, time distortion. However, this doesn't explain the barren clearing or the consistency of missing time reports. 2. Infrasound. Low-frequency sound waves below human hearing range can cause anxiety, hallucinations, and physical discomfort. Natural sources, wind through rock formations, underground caverns, could theoretically produce infrasound. However, no comprehensive infrasound study has been conducted in Hoia Baciu. 3. Psychological suggestion. The forest's reputation could prime visitors to experience phenomena through expectation and heightened awareness. Anxiety about the forest's legends could manifest as physical symptoms. However, this doesn't explain electronic malfunctions or missing time documented by skeptical visitors who entered without prior knowledge of the forest's reputation. 4. Portal or dimensional thin point. Paranormal researchers and local folklore suggest Hoia Baciu is a thin place, a location where the barrier between dimensions or realities is weak, allowing phenomena from elsewhere to manifest. This is unprovable by current scientific methods. 5. Unknown natural phenomenon. Some scientists propose that Hoia Baciu may be exhibiting an entirely natural but poorly understood phenomenon, a combination of geological, electromagnetic, and atmospheric factors that create an environment where unusual experiences occur. Modern status. Hoia Baciu Forest is open to the public. Hiking trails are maintained. Tour companies offer guided visits, haunted forest tour, for tourists. Some visitors experience nothing unusual. Others report intense phenomena. The experiences seem unpredictable. The missing shepherd. The original legend, Baciu the shepherd vanishing with 200 sheep, has never been documented in historical records. It's likely apocryphal. But the legend persists for a reason. People keep disappearing time there. Not permanently, not physically, but minutes turn into hours, memories blur, time slips. And when you emerge from Hoia Baciu Forest, your watch will tell you one thing. Your memory will tell you another. And the forest, it doesn't explain which one is right. 3 events where reality broke. 3 moments when the world stopped making sense. Strasbourg 1518. Hundreds danced, many died, no force made them, no reason explained it, reality chose violence. Ohio 1977. A signal arrived from space. 72 seconds, the perfect frequency. Then silence. Reality spoke once. Hoia Baciu forest. Time doesn't flow correctly. Electronics fail, memory fractures, reality glitches. 3 cases where the rules we trust simply stopped applying. Here's what makes reality anomalies so disturbing. They're not supernatural. They're reality behaving incorrectly. The dancers weren't possessed. They were compelled by something we can't identify. The wow signal wasn't magic. It was a transmission we can't trace. Hoia Baciu isn't cursed. It's a location where physics misbehaves. These aren't ghost stories. These are moments when reality proved it doesn't always follow the rules we've written for it. When hundreds of people dance until they die, when space transmits a signal that vanishes, when time stops flowing correctly in a forest. What does that tell us about the world we live in? Have you researched the wow signal coordinates, visited Hoia Baciu, studied medieval dancing plagues? Drop your findings below. These anomalies reward deep investigation. Share this with someone who studies physics, astronomy, or unexplained phenomena. Reality anomalies aren't violations of nature. They're nature showing us we don't understand it yet. Subscribe to WhisprFrame for more documented cases where reality broke its own rules. Because the most terrifying truth isn't that we don't know everything. It's that reality might not be as stable as we think. The dancers are gone, the signal is silent, the forest is waiting. And reality is watching to see if we notice when it glitches.